Um, Today we'll start Ruby on Rails. So first I want to discuss some basics. Some of you may have already knowledge on this basics, but still I want to discuss some basics so that you will understand what I am talking about Rails. Whenever I start Rails, you will understand what I am talking about. Maybe at least I want to do some terminology, so you will be able to understand Ruby on Rails. So first, these web technologies that we are learning, why we want to use. So further, you have to understand what is a web application. Okay. Further, you have to understand what is a web application. That means there are two kinds of applications that you will see while you are developing projects. One type of application, a desktop application. That means an application that you install in your system and you will use from your system. This application will consume any resources like memory, CPU power, all these from your desktop or from your laptop. Further, to use this application, you do not need any net connection. So for example, any system dependent games, or even if this Microsoft PPT, all these things you can install in your system, and then you will use that application from your system. But what is web application? Means this application will be running in a remote system and using a net connection and browser from your system, you will use this application. So your system doesn't need to provide any lot of you need some CPU power to use this application, but the application itself will not be running in your system CPU, or it won't use your memory, system RAM or hard disk memory. So there is difference between desktop application and web application. So in your system browser, you will be requesting service from web application, and this web application, based on whether you are allowed or whether you are not allowed, it will respond based on the your credentials and your role, whether you are administrator or some just user of this application. Based on differentiation, it will respond. So all real world online applications like even Gmail, your like our IRCTC application, all these are web applications. You will log into those servers by providing their server names, and then the server will respond with the service that you are requesting. Some applications will need your credentials like Gmail or IRCTC. Some other applications are, for example, just you are browsing some website, your college website like this. They doesn't need any credentials. They will just respond to the, even normal websites are also applications only. They will respond. Whenever you try to access that website from the browser, they will respond. So these are web applications. So here the browser in your system from where you are requesting the application, that browser will be a client, and the application that is responding for that request, that is a server. So this is the client server concept. So that means client here means something that is requesting the service. Server here means that is something that is providing the requested service. So this is the typical web application. A client, which is your browser from the local system, from where you try to access the web application, and the server is something where the application is running, your web application that you are requesting. All IRCTC, Gmail, anything that we can say as a server, application server, which is running in a remote system. Sometimes maybe application might be running in your system only, but you will access this application using browser. So client will request a service. That means here service means in general a web page. Based on the service you are requesting, it will respond with some other web page. At the background, it might be doing some other thing, like you are trying to add a student in a student management application, and server will respond with success message. At least that is a service. At the background, it has added to the student to the database. So it will respond, yeah, I have added the student details that you have requested into the database. Then it will respond with the success message, like that. So it is some service that you are requesting from your browser. So typical web application means a client will be there, a server will be there, application server. That means server here means your own web application. So all these web technologies that you are learning, using these different web technologies, you will be developing this application server. And what you are going to develop is how this application server will respond to client. What service this application server will provide to this browser client, and how it will be represented in the GUI. Someone will write a success message, someone will not write any success message, they just will redirect to the home page instead of saying I have added the student. So this is different types of representing the response. So you will be developing how GUI should be there, so that client can understand what is happening in the application, and how the database should be there, what type of details that you want to save in the database, so that whenever client can ask something, that this application can respond. And also you will write what type of logic that you will be writing, so that what different services that you can provide to the client. So this is the typical web application. For all these different services and GUI representations and database maintenance, all these things that you will be developing using web technologies. So here Ruby on Rails will follow a popular framework, that is MVC framework, which is Model View Controller Architecture. So Ruby on Rails will develop an application based on our normal Model View Controller Architecture. Here I will explain you what is model and what is view and what is controller. So but basic framework that is behind the Ruby on Rails is MVC architecture, Model View Controller Architecture. So that means whenever we are following a framework means we will be there will be some common tasks in that framework that we follow, using which we develop our own application. So here in MVC architecture, Model View Controller Architecture, there are some tasks every web developer will follow to develop their web application. So what are these basic tasks are? Like first you will define a data model. What is data model? So you are developing a simple application in your college. Like there are every semester you are going to your college will release some marks that you got in that semester exams. So and grade, all those things. Now let us say you are having some difficulty to get these marks, and you want to make some application so people can log in from their desktop system and from the browser, and they can request some application. So using their hall ticket number, they will get the marks. So let us say you have developed some web application to provide this service. You will be in that application, first the entities will be hall ticket and student details, then marks of the student. But marks are just details of some student. The entities will be just hall ticket and student. So In this way, you will analyze what are my real data that is required in my application. So the details that you will be storing in the data. So whenever a student log in into the web application, where that he can enter his hall ticket details, and then he will be able to get marks for the hall ticket, the exam marks in the exam. So in that application, the basic data that you need to save in the database will be the data model that you will be working in. The first part that you need to analyze for the web application is to understand what are the real details that are required for the web application. Real entities. Here the student and the hall ticket are the entities. Hall ticket has its own detail, student has student records will have their own details, and then what is the association between student and hall ticket, even that also you will need to analyze. Here just one to one student can have only one ticket and one hall ticket can belong to only one student. So that is the association. This type of analysis first we need to do for a web application. Based on that, once the analysis is completed, this is the main part. Lot of applications will go wrong only at this stage, and because they are wrong at this stage, entire implementation will go wrong. So first this stage should be really correct. Since our student application is very simple, but large applications can have lot of different details, different entities. Like for example, our IRCTs, there are many different entities there. Routes, train routes is an entity that they need to store, and ticket is an entity, and customer is an entity. Train itself is an entity, and different classes are there. There are how they need to associate perfect link between all these entities. That is also very important thing. So this is the data model. What is the real data that you want to store for the application to work properly? That is the first analysis that you need to do. Then you need to define the services that the application can provide on this data. In our student management application, there is like student entity is there, hall ticket entity is there. You will store the data of each and every hall ticket and each and every hall ticket's marks detail in the database. But once it is done, once you have developed a web application, the only action that you will allow is to view the details. You will not allow like they cannot edit the hall ticket number, they cannot edit the marks detail, but at least they can view the details. The only action that you will be allowing on the data model, that is the service that you are going to provide. Sometimes you will allow in ticket details, like for example in customer details, in ticket management system, you will allow customer entity to edit the details like their email data or some other phone number, they can edit all those details. So we are allowing edit action as well. But in student management application, you will only allow to view the details. You will display the details, but you will not allow to edit any details. So this type of analysis should also be there. What are the entities? Then what are the actions that you will allow on that entity? These two analysis should be already in place while you are trying to develop the web application. Now, okay. In GUI, you will show the details in a different way. The third step, I am talking about the third step, how to store the data in database. So, for example, in our ticket management system again, in IRCTC, its GUI will display different details in a different way. Customer details, routes details, all those things. Whenever you try to access IRCTC website, it will display in some way. But when it comes to database, it needs to add more details into the database. All those details you doesn't need in the GUI in web browser. So there should be some association between what is the data that you are going to represent to the user of the application and what is the data that you are really going to store in the database. in general, there will be lot of difference between how they represent in GUI, how they represent in database. And in between that you need to be able to write some code that can associate between these two. So, what is this third step talks about how to represent the data into GUI and how to save the data into the database. For example, simple example will be you are creating a customer in IRCTC, new customer. That means some new customer is trying to sign up to the IRCTC. So the simple details that customer will give in the data in GUI is his name, his email, and his phone number. Only these details at first he will give. But in database, some more details will be stored, like the time of creating the data, creating the customer, all these details, and password. The customer might give some password and username, but along with that, there will be database will store some encrypted password as well, because when IRCTC is trying to communicate over the network, it cannot directly send the password, an encrypted password. It will store a encrypted password, so it needs to store even the encrypted password. But customer doesn't need to know all these details. So there should be some association between what is the customer, what is the end data that will be represented in GUI, and what is the original data that is being stored in database. There should be that association, and our code should be able to do any type of calculations between these data. It needs to convert the data in the database in the way that is friendly to the web browser GUI.
Yeah, the only way you can do
and
is
then
go to the browser.
defining views. So this is what I am talking about. So whenever you see, for example, let me share that one. So I am requesting just Google application. Even Google is also a web application. So I have opened the web application, Google. Here, this time it is Google. So if you see, I have right clicked the web page and I am trying to open using inspect element. This is same in Internet Explorer as well. Here I am using Firefox. So in this Firefox, I have opened Google, and on this web page I am opening inspect element here. So if you notice this, you know, right, this is a HTML. All this in this window, if you see, it is HTML. So every element on this web page has some HTML. Only because of HTML that Google has responded the HTML page, and this HTML has been used to represent some GUI elements here. So for example, let us say I will right click on this element, this text box. So if I right click on this, you see, this is the text box, and it has some details here, some classes and IDs that are required for our application, Google application, to understand. So this element is some HTML only. So when I requested google.com from my browser, that Google server that is running, let us say it is running in some US server, or let us say it is running some Bangalore server. Somewhere it is running, and it has responded with all this HTML. And my browser, what is main functionality of a browser is, it should be able to understand the HTML, and it should then convert that HTML into some elements on the page. So whenever my this Google server has responded with some text box here, this browser was able to understand that text box, and it has converted that HTML into this text box web element, web page element. So whenever our application, we are writing some web application, this is also one main thing. You can't write your web application entirely in your server and think users will be able to understand the application. You need to develop So let us say you have developed the student management application, and you are going to allow students to access hall ticket details. But how people will be able to use that application is using web browser. So your application should be able to communicate with the web browser using HTML pages. So you need to develop even HTML pages. So you will develop a HTML page in which based on whenever user enters hall ticket details, you should respond with a HTML page which contains all the hall ticket details. So this is the other main part of the web application development. Now defining routes. Okay. Let me again go back to google.com. So whenever I enter google.com, so this is what I call a route, a URL. So it has responded with a web page. So let me search Jntuk here. So if you see here, the route has changed, the URL has changed. We go back. So this is a route, one URL. When I responded with Google, when I requested google.com, Google responded with this URL. Now when I try to search Jntuk, that means I am trying to use the Google application and trying to search Jntuk. So it has responded with other URL here. So that means our web application will have different routes for the different services that they provide. Whenever you do some action in this web browser, in this Google application, it will have different URL for that service. Whatever you do, like let me open Jntuk only, Jntuk Hyderabad. So now I am opening web application of Jntuk. So it has its own route here, jntuk h.ac.in. I have opened Jntuk H. So it has its own route here. Whatever I try to search or open here will have its own route. Let me say, I will open about Jntuk H. So again the route has changed. In my web application terminology, I am talking it as route, but in general we call it as an URL address, web browser address. So if I open feedback page, it has different route here. So that means every web application has different routes for different services that it will provide. So this is the first thing that whenever user try to access application, this is the first part that causes the application to respond. Without route, there is no way that we can use the application. So the first thing that when to use the application is to use the route. So application should be able to define routes for different services that it is going to provide. And for each route, it should be able to map what is the service that it is going to provide. When I clicked on feedback route, that Jntuk application should be able to map a feedback page that it has already defined in the fourth step, defining views, and that is the main part. Or if I click on contact page, that means contact route, there is different route here. The base route will be always Jntuk h.ac.in, but after that, if I click contact page, ac.in/contact, let us say that is the different route. Then Jntuk application should be able to respond with contact page. The contact page, it has already defined in fourth step, and for all the details that are required for the contact page, like Hyderabad main campus contact details and local local contact details, there will be different types of contact details that are coming from third step, because I have already stored them in third step. But how they are able to provide contact details? When did they define that someone will ask for contact details? All this analysis has been done in first and second step. So they understood whenever we are providing a JNTU application, web application to the users, they will sometimes sometimes they will need contact details. So they understood they need to store contact details in the database, and then they understood that for contact details, the only thing that they allow is view and step. For the contact, only they will be allow view. They will not allow to delete the contact details or create or edit the contact details. They already stored them in the database. The only action that is allowed on contact details is view. So in the second step, they came to know that way. Now they store the details in the database in the third step. In the fourth step, they wrote a HTML page where they will display contact details. And then in the fifth step, they defined a URL, jntuh.ac.in/contact. This is the route for which I will respond with the contact HTML page. Now, all these things needs some coordination in the application. Application cannot easily understand what is happening if different users are doing different things. And also defining data model and database, storing in the database, and replying with a HTML page. These are all different actions. They all need some coordination between them. So for that we write a controller here. So I have defined my model and I have defined my HTML pages. Model means, like for example, I know contact is a one data entity, contact details is a one data entity for JNTU application. And then I have defined the views, which means I have defined a HTML page in which these contact details will be displayed. And then I will write a controller here which will coordinate all these things, storing in the database and then retrieving from the database as well. You have stored the details, but whenever user requests these details, you should be able to retrieve from the database as well, all these contact details. So all these things will be coordinated using the controller. So if you go to next slide, is this font very small to you? I hope that you are able to see this font. So these are the, I have simplified the steps that are in previous slide into this diagram here. So these are the basic steps that are involved in MVP architecture based web application development. So first you will define the model with different details that are different entities. Contact details is one entity, but how you represent contact details in database can be, they can be in different tables, but first entity is contact details. That way you will define a data model, different entities that your application needs to store and needs to work on. Then you will define different services that you will allow on this data model. For contact details, you will only allow to display user to ask to display the details. User cannot edit the contact details of JNTUH. Second, but still get the details. So that type of defining actions that are allowed after the that analysis should be there in second step. Next, you will define database and schemas for the table. So contact details, how you want to store the details. For example, you will define two tables to understand the contact details. So one table will have original address of the details, different contacts. Second table will have the just names of the local entities. JNTU Hyderabad. JNTU Hyderabad has different the main campus will have different local campuses like Koti or JNTUH Secunderabad, like that. So different local entities names will be there, and the mapping to the local entities to their own address will be in second table. Like that, how the original details, how they will be represented on the database, whether they are in 2 tables, 1 table, or they are in 3 to 4 tables, what is the foreign key association between them, all these details we will define in the third step. And then you will write in the fourth step, define browser GUI, how these details will be displayed in the GUI. Whether all the details are displayed, database will have many more details that are required for application software. But in GUI, you don't need to present all those details. So that is the fourth step. You will analyze what type of details should be there on the GUI. So based on that, you will write HTML elements, whether they should be displayed in a frame, or whether they should be displayed in a text box, or whether they should be displayed using radio buttons. All those things you will write in the fourth step, so that our browser can understand, because client is asking this request using the browser only. So application should be able to communicate to the browser. Next, in the fifth step, you will define the routes. So okay, our contact details HTML page is there, but how user can request this page is using the route. So whenever I click on the contact link in the Jntuk website, the route will be jntuk.ac.in/contact. So that route should be defined in our application. So whenever that route request goes to the controller, this controller can route the request to that original HTML page. So our original controller will be acting behind all these application tasks. So it will coordinate them, it will extract the response, then again our controller will send the response to the browser which is requesting the service. So this is some background that you need to understand for the Rails. So once you understand what is this model view controller, then lot of Rails is already almost, it will write entire code almost for you. You doesn't need to do lot of things to start to develop a web application. But if you understand this what is model view controller, then you already understood what is Rails is all about. So to understand,
Are you drafting the letters or?
so here in this slide, Rails is Ruby based. The underlying code whatever you write is actually Ruby code only. Then it is a framework to develop web-based application. Rails uses the model view controller architecture. So that is what we talked about. So it uses the model view controller architecture. Model classes are the data classes including constraint enforcement. So here model. So why we learned about model view controller is this is how we write the code. Model writing data model means you are defining some classes for the model. That these classes are data entities that your application will work with. So in IRCTC, I am writing classes for different classes for ticket, customer, train route, all these things. There will be different classes will be there. So defining data model means you will be writing code in terms of classes for all the different data entities. So including constraint enforcement means different constraints, restrictions, the way that customer should be or the way that train should be, like that. So for customer name you cannot use more than some 15 characters like that. So that type of constraint enforcement should be already there while writing data model. View classes present the data to the user. So there will be another type of code that we write in web application where we write the classes to make our code present the data to the user. So controller architecture means controller classes perform computation, yeah, and deal with the user interaction. So this controller class will coordinate the model classes and view classes. It will communicate between these two model classes and view classes. So for these two to be able to communicate, there might need some computations, background calculations might need. So all these things will be performed in controller classes. Rails uses an object relational mapping approach to working with databases. So what does this mean? Rails uses an object relational mapping. Just a minute. One question I got, should every website follow MVC architecture? No need, but the applications that we develop using the technology of Ruby and Rails, it will follow MVC architecture. The original Rails logic and everything that you should get by default, all this will be in model view controller architecture only. That means whenever you create a project using Ruby and Rails, you will already get some default base code. So this base code is already in model view controller architecture only. So we don't need, but if you are not going to use Ruby and Rails, you doesn't need to follow MVC architecture. There are some other good frameworks instead of MVC architecture as well. Another question, is PHP best suited or Ruby best suited for designing websites according to present day situation? That we cannot say. So in using Ruby, there are you can define different types of web applications. Not only web applications, there are like for example, you can use Ruby while writing applications for your rocket launching, all those things. So even Jntuk is used to develop Rails. Rails is based on Ruby only, and also Ruby and Rails is not for web designing. It is for web development. For designing, you need to understand CSS, style sheets, all those things. The web designing itself is entirely different course. So you will develop the application, but how you design your application so that users will be easily able to understand the application, that is called web design. For web design, you will need to go through some other course. It is about development, but there is no comparison between other technologies and Ruby and Rails. But you need to understand each and every technology is suitable for different types of applications. Based on your applications, you have to opt for Ruby and Rails or whether it is some other technology like PHP. But yes, Ruby and Rails is very fast. Using Ruby and Rails, you can develop applications very fast. So if your requirement is to develop a web application very fast and to make it place within very few time, within very less time, then you can go for Ruby and Rails. And also it is very easily maintainable. So if your project is very big and developers will be changing constantly. The one developer who is working on today, if he is not going to available on let us say within 2 months, like that. So maintaining the code will be very difficult. But using Ruby and Rails, it is like the code has its own documentation. It generates the documentation. The tests also generate the documentation, using which the understanding the application will be very easy. So even if you have very large project and if no one is going to give any details about the project, newcomer can easily understand what is there in the code. So these are some requirements while you are developing the project based on which you will opt for the technology to develop the application. IDE, yeah, there are different IDEs. I am using whatever the code I am showing till now. I am using Eclipse, but there are different IDEs. Ruby has based on Ruby itself. There are some Ruby main IDEs there. So different IDEs are already there. So that is also preference only. I am working in Eclipse from a long time, so I prefer Eclipse even for Ruby projects. But there are some only Ruby based IDEs are also there. So these are some questions I got. Is there any IDE? Which tools is used to develop Rails? Rails is based on Ruby only. There are no other extra tools are any there. And is PHP based suited or Ruby based suited for the application? That is preference based on different requirements. But PHP is long-standing technology. So many already other projects are already using PHP. There is also one consideration, scalability. So whenever large number of users are going to use, for example, Google application is going to be used by lakhs and crores of people. So in that case, that means that is what we call scalability. When large number of users are going to use, large number of requests are going to hit your application, you need to consider that scalability factor. Sometimes for some applications, Ruby on Rails is not that much good scalable. It is actually very rare scenario. For only very rare applications, Ruby on Rails is not scalable. In that case, you will go for PHP like that. So it is you need to understand these factors once you start really developing large projects. But for now, Ruby on Rails. Immediate web, like for example that student management application that I am talking about. For that, Ruby on Rails is perfectly fine. But even scalability factor is very rare. These days, Ruby on Rails is very good technology. So this is the overview of Rails. Rails uses an object relational mapping approach to working with database. This means I will talk about this in just next slide. There is how we represent this database and our classes. I will tell you. Then Rails uses a combination of Ruby code and template files to create responses. Even these template files, actually these are predefined files based on which we develop the application, but even these template files also follow Ruby code only. The background code is Ruby code. So you will write a manual Ruby code, or you will use already written Ruby code template file to develop the application. So I will show you. When we create the Ruby Rails project, you will default get all this directory structure and some template files. I will show you this. So we go to the next slide to understand this object relational mapping approach. You will understand this. So here, if you see, so from my code perspective, let us say there is cars application is there, in which user will enter some car model. Then it will have he will get all the details about the car. Whether this car's engine is put this way, or whether this car has some other types of airbags. All those details he will get about the car. Let us say Alto K10 car. He will enter Alto K10 model name. Then he will get all the details about Alto K10. Yeah, it is its speed is it can reach the speeds up to this way, and it offers many number of colors, like this, all these details. So he needs, let us say that application is there. So in Ruby on Rails, in code perspective, you will write a cars entity like in data model, which is a cars class. In database, how you will store is cars table itself. So whenever I am dealing cars class from user perspective, the original data is stored in database using cars table, and this So the data will be retrieved from database from the cars table only. So if I enter all different instances of the cars class are different rows in database. So in this cars table in database will have different cars details, Alto K10 car, Hyundai Eon car, like that, Maruti Suzuki, like that, or Honda item, like that. All different cars details are different rows in the cars table. Now our cars class instances each and every instance is each and every row of this table. So actually this is not followed in many other technologies. So the association will be very difficult to understand in any other technologies. So but when it comes to rail, the database and there will, if there is an entity in the database like cars, there will be an corresponding entity in our code, of the replication code. So cars class means there will be a cars table in our database. So each and every row is each and every like in the item is car is there. So it is an entity, an instance for the cars class in our code. And also let us say if that Alto K10 car has different attributes like speed, color, all these attributes are there. So in database these attributes will be stored in cars table column. So for K10 car, one column in cars table will be speed, the other column in cars table for that Alto K10 car will be color, like that. And in our code these columns will be the attributes of the cars class. So the K10 car will be the instance of the car class, and that K10 attributes will be speed or color, all those things, or whether it has airbags or not. That is one attribute. So all these different, this is the way how data will be represented in the code and in the database. There is almost one-to-one association is there. A class means a table, and a class instance means a row in the table, and that instance attributes means the column for that row in the table. So almost one-to-one association is there. It is very easy to understand what is happening in the database and its corresponding association in the code. So even you will be able to write, there is no extra code to write to convert this code cars class into database representation. There is no extra code required. Almost immediately a cars class can be easily converted to database. And since there is no extra code that a developer need to write, it can be automated. It is already it will be already done by Ruby on Rails. You doesn't need to concentrate so much on how to store this data in database. So in that way you doesn't need to think. You have written a class means automatically a table will be created in the database, and Ruby on Rails will automatically convert whatever data that user enters into the GUI into database table. So this is the association here. Rails project creation is very easy. Once you have Ruby and Ruby on Rails installed in your system, creation is easy, and by creating the project you will get some default directory structure. It is also one main aspect of Rails project. So for example, let us say in other applications, in other technologies, there is no default directory structure. Even if it is very minimal. They can change this default directory structure to something else. So once the project becomes very big, and let us say you are working in the project which is based on some other PHP, some other technology, and from a long time, now you left the project, someone else comes into the project. So even to learn the directory structure will take long time. What is is this directory means what type of code is there in this directory, and what type of other code is there in other directories. To learn just directory structure will take long time for other technologies. But in Ruby on Rails, once I create the project, I will have some default directory structure that I need to follow. So anywhere you go, not only this application, whatever application that is going to be developed using Ruby on Rails will have the same directory structure. So it is very easy, and each directory has its own functionality that you can easily understand, because that is the default functionality assigned to the directory. So for example, library directory is there in my Ruby on Rails project. All the required packages will be there only in library directory, in that way. So I will show you. So here I am changing to desktop here. So you come to see there is no Ruby on Rails project here. There is no Ruby on Rails project on the desktop now. But now if I can create using Rails new, I have already Ruby on Rails installed in my system. That is why from my command line I am able to create new project. So Rails new, let us say I am creating Jntuk Rails project demo. This is the project I am going to create, Ruby on Rails. So if you see, while creating, it is already creating different templates, different directories for the project itself. I don't need to create all of them. This is one easy aspect again regarding the Ruby on Rails. I will start once after showing what is the different directories that you got. Tomorrow I will explain what is the meaning of these different directories. Then we will see how to create a simple web application using this. So if you see here, it created different directories and it has created different associations between all these directories automatically. I don't need to create. Now let me open here. See, this is the project I have got. Jntuk Rails. Are you able to see the font? These are all different directories that I already got by default. I don't need to create any of these directories. So I just need to put my code based on the functionality assigned to this directory. So app directory will have different types of codes for my data models, HTML pages, all those things. Library directory will have all the different libraries. Even sometimes you will use outside code to make your application work properly. All that code you will put here, and vendor is there. This is the third party code that you will put here. So in this way, all this directory structure is already predefined for me. So once now I am telling you what is the functionality of this directory structure. So where you go, even after many years, the functionality of this directory will be same. And let us say later you got one Ruby on Rails project that we need to work on. So you already know what is this directory is going to, what type of code is placed in these directories. So it is very easy to understand Ruby on Rails project. So I have created a project and I got the different directories here. Tomorrow I will properly explain what these directories will do, or while doing the project itself you will come to understand. So I will start here for today. Is there any idea? No. Why you are saying no? I am talking about something else. Sweet Prakash College. What is this no means? Oh, font not visible. Okay, fine. Tomorrow I will show you the directory structure.